In this section, we will talk about Texas hurricane history. Are we at risk for a hurricane in Texas? You bet. Texas has experienced 56 direct hits from hurricanes in 150 years of record keeping. That's an average of one hurricane every 3 years. But these are the big ones, the Category 3 and 4 storms. Remember, we've never had a Category 5 hit Texas. We've had 18 of these major hurricane strikes. That averages to one every 8 to 9 years. But these are the last 30 years of our history. 4 major hurricanes, one every 7.5 years, but none on the mid-Texas coast. 2 major storms passed to our south, and 2 major storms to our north. Science and statistics tell us a line will fill the gap. We just don't know exactly when or where. Looking deeper into hurricane history, the following graphs show the major hurricane landfalls on the U.S. coastline during 10-year increments. Back in the 1850s, there were no major hurricanes to hit Texas. No major storms hit during the 1860s either. That's 20 years, no major hurricane strikes. Then in the 1870s, there were 2 major storms to hit Texas, and one devastated Indianola in 1875. Indianola rebuilt, and then in the following decade, the 1886 storm destroyed the town for the last time, and they moved the port city to Houston, where it stands today. But then in 1900, there was the Great Galveston Hurricane. An estimated 6,000 to 12,000 fatalities occurred as a result of this storm, most of them drowned by the powerful storm surge. This storm produced the greatest loss of life from a single disaster in U.S. history, and this record still stands today. In the decade of the 1900s, there was one major hurricane, the 1909 storm. But in the teens, there were 4 devastating storms impacting nearly every community on the Texas coast. One was the 1919 storm, which impacted Corpus Christi directly. This hurricane resulted in 1,000 fatalities along its life through the Florida Straits to the Texas coast. In the 1920s, there were no major hurricanes to hit Texas. In the 1930s, there were 2 major storms. Also during this time, the seawall was built in Corpus Christi and Galveston. In the 1940s, there were 2 major storms, both impacting the mid-Texas coast. The 1950s were relatively quiet for Texas, with the exception of Hurricane Audrey, which dealt a devastating blow to the Texas-Louisiana border, the same location Hurricane Rita struck in 2005. The decade of the 1960s were very active again, with 3 major hurricanes impacting the Middle Texas coast, including Carla, Beulah, and Celia, and it's been quiet ever since. In the 1970s, there was only one storm to hit Texas directly, Allen, which struck South Texas, but produced damaging storm surge all the way to Corpus Christi, over 100 miles north of where the center crossed the coastline. In the 1980s, there was only one storm, Alicia, which developed quickly and struck Houston with little advanced warning. In the 1990s, there was Brett, which made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane in the least populated county in the nation. Very little damage was observed. And finally, we have come to our current decade. It's been quiet with the exception of Rita, which struck the Texas-Louisiana border in 2005. Do we have another active decade coming on the horizon? It's impossible to know, but history often repeats itself. El Niño and La Niña have an impact on hurricane seasons. One major climatological factor that can have an effect on the number of storms in the Atlantic hurricane basin, which includes the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf of Mexico, is El Niño and La Niña. El Niño is the result of the warming of the central and eastern equatorial Pacific Ocean. These warm waters then generate an increase in shower and thunderstorm activity, which then goes on to produce a stronger than normal jet stream over the Atlantic hurricane basin. This jet stream produces strong suppression and wind shear, which helps to prevent tropical storm and hurricane formation, and generally results in more quiet hurricane seasons on average. However, it does not mean that major devastating storms cannot occur. Hurricane Andrew occurred during an El Niño season. La Niña is the opposite of El Niño. La Niña is when the cooler than normal waters occupy the central and eastern equatorial Pacific waters. With cooler water comes reduced precipitation and weaker wind shear over the Atlantic. This results in more ideal weather conditions, those prone to hurricane formation, and more active seasons on average. Regardless of the hurricane forecast, every citizen living within 100 miles of the U.S. coastline should take hurricanes seriously and prepare as if this was the year for a major hurricane strike. Although the hurricane season lasts from June 1st through November 30th, hurricane preparations during the off-season can help you reduce your losses in the event a hurricane strikes during the middle of the season. Prepare as if this is your year for a major hurricane. It only takes one. Have a safe hurricane season. For more information, please contact the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at your nearest National Weather Service office, or go to our website at www.weather.gov.